Here's our practice for our equivalent fractions. This was equivalent fraction sheet 3, and it's really practicing that multiplication to get from one fraction to the next. So I have 1/3 and I want to know how many sixths. So 3 times 2 is 6. So I need to do 1 times 2, and I get 2. Number 2, 1/4 to 12ths. Well, 4 times 3 is 12. And so 1 times 3 is 3. Number 3, 1/3 to 9ths. To get from 3 to 9, I multiply by 3. 3 times 3 is 9. And if I multiply the bottom by the 3, because I knew what the denominator was, that's why I'm using the denominator to start, then I need to do the same to the top. And 1 times 3 is 3. Number 4, 1/2. Well, half of 12 is 6. Number 5, 1/4 to 8. Since I know I'm going from 4 to 8, I know it's going to be times 2. If I had to do times 2 on the bottom, then I have to do times 2 on the top. 1 times 2 is 2. My next one, 1/2 to 8ths. Well, I know half of 8 is 4. So if I do times 4 on the top and bottom, I get that. The next one, 1/6 to 12ths. To get from 6 to 12, I do times 2. If I do times 2 on the bottom, I do times 2 on the top. 1 times 2 is 2. From 5 to 10, 5 times 2 is 10. 1 times 2 is 2. So 1/5 is equivalent to 2/10. The next one, 2/2. That's a whole, which means my top and bottom need to be the same on that one. Okay, number 10, 3/4 is equivalent to something eighths. Okay, I know to do 4 times 2 to equal 8, so 3 times 2 equals 6. So 3/4 equals 6/8. Number 11, 2/3 to 6ths. I know 3 times 2, there's a lot of times 2, equals 6. If I do times 2 on the bottom, I have to do times 2 on the top. 2 times 2 is 4. Number 12, 2/4 equals how many 12ths? Well, to get from 4 to 12, I multiply by 3. If I'm multiplying the bottom by 3, then I need to multiply the top by 3. And 2 times 3 is 6. And 2/4 is a half, and 6/12 is a half. So I could do a little double check on that one too. Number 13, 2/3 equals how many ninths? To get from 3 to 9, I do times 3. If I do times 3 on the bottom, I do times 3 on the top, and 2 times 3 is 6. So 2/3 equals 6/9. 4/6 equals how many 12ths? I'm going to do times 2 on the top and the bottom, and 4 times 2 is 8. 3/5 to how many tenths? 5 times 2 is 10, so 3 times 2 is 6. 3/4 is how many 12ths? 4 times 3 is 12, so 3 times 3 is 9. So 3/4 equals 9/12. Number 17, 4/5 equals how many tenths? 5 times 2 is 10, so 4 times 2 is 8. So 4/5 equals 8/10. Number 18, 3/6 is how many 12ths? They're both a half, but let's double check it. 6 times 2 is 12, 3 times 2 is 6, and 6/12 is equal to a half. Number 19, 2/5 is how many tenths? 5 times 2 is 10, and 2 times 2 then is 4. So 2/5 equals 4/10. Number 20, 4/4 is 1 whole, so these need to have the same top and bottom, so 12/12. My last two rows, it gives us the numerator. So 1/2 equals 4 over something. 1 times 4 equals 4. So now the top number is driving the multiplication problem. So 2 times 4 is 8. And 4/8 is a half, so that works. Number 22, 1/4 equals 3 something. I know 1 times 3 is 3. And so 4 times 3 is 12. So 1/4 equals 3/12. Number 23, 1/3 equals 3 something. Well, 1 times 3 is 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. Number 24, 2/4 equals 4 of something. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. And 4 times 2 is 8. And 2/4 equals 4/8, and they all equal a half, so I know that one's right. And our last row, I have 1/2 again equals 5 somethings. Well, I know that it's going to be 10, but I can check that with my multiplication. 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 5 is 10, so that works. 26, 3/4 equals 6 somethings. 3 times 2 is 6. And 4 times 2 is 8. Number 27, 2/3 equals 6 somethings. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. Number 28, 3/4 equals 9 somethings. 3 times 3 is 9. And so 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, so for our equivalent fractions, we just need to find out what that multiplication problem is and do the same thing to the top and the bottom.